Welcome. Welcome to each of you here in person and online. Welcome to the all of who you are. Welcome to you who love to move and to you who love to be still. Welcome to you who would love to sing at the top of your lungs. I'm looking at you. And to you who would rather pick up a paintbrush, a hiking stick, a hammer, a protest sign, or a book. We gather here in this hour as different people whose passions and inner life are stirred by various experiences. As a congregation, part of our mission calls us to deepen our spirituality by gathering to share words and music, moments of reflection, and experiences of reverence. In this gathering today, may we explore anew the various ways we might nurture our spirits, or if you prefer, how we might nurture our inner lives, our energies, our awakeness to life. You need not resonate with every spiritual path pursued today, but as we move through this hour, ask yourself, what stirs my spirit? What awakens me? What helps renew my energies so that I might say yes to life? Let us begin by the spiritual practice of ritual, by lighting the chalice and saying our covenant together. Thanks to the Williams family for lighting today. These rituals shared by UU congregations across the country remind us that we are not alone, but linked by shared values and promises for how we hope to show up for one another here and in our shared world.
Please join us in saying the covenant. With open minds and loving hearts, we gather to search for meaning, to care for one another, and to work together for a better world.
There are many ways that we connect with what stirs us deep within. One path of connection is through social action. Each of us holds values of what is right and wrong, of how people should be treated, and of how we should interact with one another and with the wider world. Too often we can move through life without stopping to remember and reconnect with these values. And so when we take time in services to mark days of observance that are important to the LGBTQ+ community, we are not simply checking off boxes on our welcoming congregation renewal. We are reaffirming and deepening our connection to our values and to the lives of those who have too often suffered from hatred, injustice, and violence. Today, we light candles in recognition of the May 17 International Day against homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia. With these candles, we seek to bring our attention again to these persistent fears that have created true harm to the minds, bodies, and spirits of folks who identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and more. Celebrated in countries around the globe on May 17, the date was chosen because it was the day that the World Health Organization decided to remove homosexuality from the International Classification of Diseases in 1990. Sexual and gender expression are deeply rooted in our sense of who we are. Freely living out our sexual and gender expression is part of human dignity and spiritual fullness. To light these candles is one way to bear witness to all the fear and harm of homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia, as well as the free expression of identity and love. Bearing witness to our values through social, I'm gonna light one second. Bearing witness to our values through social witness and social action is one path for deepening our spirituality. Our opening hymn is itself a song of social witness, written after the assassination of Harvey Milk. It is a song of protest against such violence and a song of affirmation for the world we seek to build. Recently, the composer Holly Near indicated her sense that the verse, "We are gay and straight together," is no longer inclusive enough. And then she led the song with new lyrics, "We are all in this together." Perhaps if you remember, we might sing this new line, a powerful reminder of a core truth. We are all in this together. Please rise for hymn 170, "We Are a Gentle, Angry People."
Hi, my name is Alyssa Lee. I'm the ministerial intern here, and my pronouns are she, hers. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about movement. Movement can also be a vital form of spiritual practice for many people. It can be anything from embodied spiritual movement to yoga to possibly even dance. And many people feel most connected with their spirit when they can just turn off the stress of the day and focus on the joy and liberation of just simply moving their bodies in whatever way makes them feel comfortable. So today, we're going to have a little fun with movement. We're going to do what we call a generations dance. So that's right. We're going to have a dance off here in the sanctuary and hopefully at home as well. So I'm going to play a short clip of dance music that was popular in the United States during your youth, and ask each generation to dance to the music in any way you would have back in the day, or even now if you feel comfortable. I encourage you to move in whatever way makes you feel comfortable. Feel free to sit, stand, dance in place, but even better, please come out in the aisles and really move. And also those of you on home, please keep your camera on, try to get your groove on, possibly. That was maybe the nerdiest thing I've ever said. So here we go. All right, so we're gonna start with the builders. So we have the GI generation, that's 1900 to 1924, and the silent generation, 1925 to 1945. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about each of the generations before we have our dance off. So the greatest generation is a term coined by journalist Tom Brokaw to describe the generation of Americans who grew up during the deprivation of the Great Depression and then went on to fight in World War II, as well as those whose productivity within the war's home front made a decisive material contribution to the war effort. Some of those who survived the war then went on to build and rebuild the United States industries in the years following the war. There's also the silent generation, that's 1925 to 1945. That was a generation born between the two world wars who were too young to join the service when World War II started. Many had fathers who served in World War I. Many members of the silent generation went on to harness the scientific and technological advances of the Second World War, developing innovative inventions which laid the groundwork for even more technological progress in the late 20th century. So, I'm not looking at anyone in particular, but are you ready, GI and silent generations, to dance? Okay, boomers, I got my eye on you next. We've got the baby boomer generation, those born between 1946 and 1964. This was a generation born just after World War II, a time that included a 14-year increase in birth rate worldwide. Baby boomers in their teenage and college years were characteristically part of the 1960s counterculture, but later became more ideologically divided. Although the generation remained widely committed to keystone values such as gender equality, racial equality, and environmental stewardship. As a group, they were the healthiest and wealthiest generation to that time, and amongst the first to grow up genuinely expecting the world to improve with time. So, generations, are you ready? Boomers, are you ready? Let's do this. Let's see what you got. Okay, thank you, appreciate that. All right, Gen Xers might be someone up here. They're individuals considered to be within Generation X were born between 1965 and 1979. And they grew up during the later years of and in the decade following the Cold War. They were most often linked to the presidencies of Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Coming of age after the Vietnam War had ended, their political experiences were shaped by the end of the Cold War and the fall of the Berlin Wall. Famously known as cynical and disengaged, this generation saw the inception of the home computer, the rise of video games, and the internet as a tool for social and commercial purposes. Dot-com businesses, MTV, grunge music, hip-hop culture, and AIDS are associated with this generation. So here we go, Gen Xers. All right, thank you, Gen Xers. All right, millennials, it's your turn. That may just be me. All right, here we go. Those amongst us born between 1980 and 1995 are characterized by their helicopter parents, idealism, and community focus, and tech savviness. Often called the Echo Baby Boom, this is the largest and most multicultural generation of the United States has ever seen. The rise of instant communication technologies made possible through use of the internet, such as email, texting, and IM, and new media used through websites like YouTube and social networking sites may explain the millennials' reputation for being pure-oriented and for seeking instant gratification. Can't be me. All right, here we go, millennials. Anyone else want to just join the millennial? No, just the me. Okay. I think we're fine on that one. All right, Gen Z. So I'm going to include even maybe younger than Gen Z. So Gen Z is a common name in the US and other Western nations for the group of people born from 1995 and onward. So namely the kids and youth among us today. So kids, we're looking at you. So this generation has grown up with the World Wide Web and mobile technological devices, all things that Gen Xers dreamed about while watching the Jetsons. The youngest of the generation were born during a minor fertility boom around the time of the US global financial crisis of the late 2000s. Decade, ending around the year 2010, with the next generation I succeeding. They have been born and raised after the Cold War era and the fall of the Soviet Union. Members of Gen Z are typically the children of Generation X. Their parents may also include the youngest baby boomers and the oldest millennials. This generation has also been born completely into an era of postmodernism and globalization. And they're both our present and our future. So, Gen Z, anybody want to get up?
Take my horse to the hotel room. I'm gonna till I can't no more. I got the horses in the bag. Horse stock is attached. Head is matted black. Got the bushes black to match. Riding on a horse. Ha, you can whip your Porsche. I've been in the valley. You ain't been up off that porch. Now can't nobody tell me nothing.
Appreciate it. Okay, so thank you so much for participating in our spiritual practices movement. So now we're going to sing out our young members to seek. So here we go. Thank you so much.
As I said, there is a difference among different spiritual paths. And so in contrast to movement, or in supplement and in relationship to movement, there is also stillness. So I now invite you to rest in stillness as we sing the song, Find a Stillness, hymn number 352, before moving into a time of prayer and stillness. 352.
please join me in the spirit of prayer or meditation. Let's take a deep breath in and out. Another deep breath in and out. Spirit of life, in this season of ever-increasing activity and busyness, may we be reminded of some of the lessons we once learned when we had nothing more to do but watch our sourdough starters rise. May we remember to sit in the stillness of life from time to time, to listen to the birds calling out to one another in the morning that they made it through another night, to watch the clouds drift by, and perhaps feel our bodies as we move slowly and meditatively in the brightness of a spring day. Let us take time to consider not what everyone around us wants, but what we need. May we take a moment to pause and nurture our spirit, that part of ourselves that reminds us to sit in the stillness and just breathe. Now let us take that well-deserved moment of stillness. Let us pause and reflect on the week that has gone by and turn our thoughts to the week that is still on the horizon.
I'm Lynn Morrison. My pronouns are she, hers, and I'm one of the lay ministers in this congregation. This is the time in our service we set aside to acknowledge the joys and the sorrows that we, together as a community, hold. As I light this first candle, I wish to acknowledge the sorrows that we hold. We are heartbroken by the racially motivated shooting in Buffalo yesterday. We hold the victims and their families in love as we mourn with their community. Many of us are angered by the recent attacks on reproductive justice in this country and are worried about the impact these attacks may have on other civil rights, which we hold dear. As I light this second candle, I name also the joys we hold together as a community. We are grateful for all the teachers in our lives, in the springtime especially, how they have shepherded their students through these difficult times. We are thankful for the warmer weather and for the bright sunny days. If you wish, please join us immediately after the service for a time of sharing our joys and sorrows with each other in person and on Zoom.
I'm Laurel Whitehouse, and my pronouns today are she, her, hers. I'm going to read excerpts from a piece called The Invitation by Oriah Mountain Dreamer. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for. I want to know if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking a fool for love, for your dream, for the adventure of being alive. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own, if you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes, without cautioning us to be careful, to be realistic, to remember the limitations of being human. I want to know if you can see beauty, even when it is not pretty, every day. And if you can source your life from that beauty, from its presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand on the edge of the lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes.
As we're trying to convey in this service, spirituality shows up in many different ways in different people's lives. To this end, we've asked 3 folks to offer reflections on ways spirituality connects to parts of their lives. Thanks to Ted, Patrick, and Laurel for sharing.
Speed creates an illusion of invincibility. We hurry through our days, numbing ourselves to the deeper flow of our lives. We feel shallow and push ourselves to live harder, when what we need is to live more deeply and quietly. That's a quote from Julia Cameron's Walking in This World, part of her Artist's Way series. Recently, I've been trying to put myself back into songwriting. As a part of the spiritual aspect of this, I choose to believe sometimes if you start a journey of authenticity, stay on true north, and are paying attention, looking for what's missing to go forward, what you need, you can get lucky and the universe gives back. And sometime last year for me, that meant stumbling onto The Artist's Way by Cameron, a book first published in the 90s. At the time of stumbling, I'd not heard of it. Reading it has me on what I think of as a spiritual journey grounded in songwriting. For me, spirituality has elements of taking in a beautiful natural landscape, an ocean view, a walk in the woods or a field, experiencing a piece of art, doing a kindness, having a deep conversation with a spouse or a good friend, connecting with something higher, beautiful, related to growth, aiming at decency, something larger than ourselves, outside of ourselves, and songwriting. In the artist's way, Cameron makes a lot of references to God as some sort of entity that loves artists and creativity. She argues that in all of us, there is the potential and means, if we try, to open ourselves to tapping into the Creator's flow and energy as part of a spiritual practice. I'm a third-generation agnostic Unitarian, damn it, who gravitated more towards Kant and Rousseau and the thinking of the founders than religious teachings and traditions. Though we have ministers in our family history, and I have a sister who has gone somewhat into the field, I've never thought much about spirituality of any flavor, sort of suspicious of the topic. It wasn't about reason. I continue to believe that there are some things we can't and won't know, so frequent use of the idea of God as an active influence for me often was and still is uncomfortable. But I think, like maybe done in other contexts, I have come to think of it and embrace Cameron's idea of God as an idea that I can take in and shape, as a way of thinking that, whether real or not, is part of my songwriting. It's about choosing to believe in something larger than me, something outside of me, where if I listen, if I slow down, paradoxically, deeply focus and let go, that's where the spiritual magic can happen. Cameron offers various ways to take care of and nurture all of this. Recurring phrases she uses for artists is that the job is to show up at the page, worry about the quality, and this other entity will take care of the quantity. I think Stalin said something to that effect, that there is a quality in quantity when talking about the Soviet military, perhaps. Maybe another conversation. Cameron also talks extensively about how aspects of this have to be a solo journey, and provides tools like morning pages, where daily you write 3 pages of stream of consciousness, what I think can be called journaling, and artist dates, where if morning pages are about brain dumping out, the artist date is about inflow, an hour or so a week to do something playful, something nourishing, something replenishing, and at least a 20-minute weekly walk, solo walk, which I'm doing now in addition to other kinds of exercise, where the meditative physical replenishes the spiritual and creative, and then show up at the page. Songwriting for me, in part, is about process, music theory, technique, or lack thereof in my case, work ethic and discipline. But then there's that other spiritual part which starts at a recurring place, which is not just about showing up at the page, but showing up at the blank page, where at first it feels like I'm spitting out already tread depressing noises and goofy words, until something happens that I say, I think I want to do something with that. There's something there that grabs me. Spiritual focusing and letting go doesn't stop there, but continues on as the song develops and progresses from start to finish. It's about pulling something from outside of me through that didn't exist before. And eventually, if I keep showing up at the page, leads to music that comes deeply, sounds good to me at least, and that can cover any topic, feeling, or idea, rich with love or irony or anger or evil, or you name it. Art that speaks from this mystery place that I doubt can be fully explained as a chemical process, though undoubtedly the chemical stuff is going on, and in some respects is how it all works. But for me, it's the spiritual, creative part that pulls something forward. It is about grabbing the lightning and capturing it in a bottle, and then back to the blank page to start all over again.
It's been a while. When I was 17 years old, I was accepted into a monastery. And at 18, I went off and lived a monastic life for 8 years. Hours in the pew. My only job was to read, study, pray. I lived a celibate life. Everything was taken care of. My food, my shelter, everything. I really had nothing to worry about. A lot of my peers would say to me, "How do you do that?" And inside I would say, "How do you do that?" I solemnized weddings. I baptized children and adults, and I committed bodies to the earth. Pema Chodron, one of my spiritual teachers, says sometimes things fall apart, and sometimes they come together, and sometimes they fall apart again. It's just like that. Nothing ever really gets solved. And that's what happened to me. I left that life and began a family, and that's where my spiritual journey really was born. I traded cleaning golden chalices for very used Tupperware bins, leftover food and pasta sauce that never seemed to come clean. My cathedral was the kitchen sink, and the late nights of waking up to take care of my child were my moments in prayer. I chose to enter into a partnership with my wife here, Melody, and we said on our wedding day, "Where you go, I will go. Your people will become my people. Your home will become my God. Your home will become my home, and your God will become my God." That's my practice today, and it's hard. But I speak that in truth to you today, that being here and fully present for you, my family, my mother-in-law, Karen, and my child who is in the Seek program, as we speak here, that my practice is to be fully present as a husband, as a son-in-law, as a dad. It's hard, but it's worth it.
So we hope that we're giving you three somewhat different views of what spirituality and spiritual practice could be. Mine is much messier than my predecessors here, because weeding is my spiritual practice of choice. Weeding appeals to my inner senses of order, beauty, and agency. Time recedes when I am weeding. I experience a visual merging with the plants in front of me. I can close my eyes and still see them. I can reach my fingers into a tangle of plants that I want and pull out the one weed that I don't. So weeding teaches patience, perseverance, and most importantly, acceptance of imperfection and impermanence. It will all need to be done again. So I experience while weeding the ease of a practiced art. Beyond that, I prefer not to wear gloves when gardening or shoes if I can get away with it. The physical connection of my hands, my knees, my feet to the soil is a compelling but gentle force. All of my physical senses are engaged. The sight of the rich browns and greens before me, the smell of the rich humus that I'm working in, the feel of that damp earth on my fingers, clinging to my knees, my feet. My husband calls me his garden girl. The sounds of roots yielding as I pull them, and the taste of encountering the occasional dollop of soil in my coffee. So through all of my five senses, I experience mindfulness. And beyond that, I am in contact with the microscopic mycorrhizal network of fungal hyphae in the soil. I reflect that there are 2 miles of fungal hyphae in 2 tablespoons of soil. I reflect on the connection to something immensely forceful yet invisible and silent. I am immersed in the rhythm of nature and the flow of the universe, and I experience peace and belonging beyond all knowing.
Having heard these three reflections, I repeat the questions I began with. What stirs my spirit? What awakens me? What helps renew my energies so that I might say yes to life? Our next category of spiritual practice is sharing. Early in my ministry, I spoke with someone who explained to me that what moved them was not lobbying and protesting to change laws, but doing something concrete to help someone who is suffering now. Indeed, sharing with others the resources we have to give of time, of knowledge, of money, can make an immediate and concrete difference in people's lives. Cultivating practices of sharing and of generosity can be a spiritual practice of intentional expression of our values, our core commitments. Each week when we include an offering as part of the service, we do so not only because of the very real and concrete financial needs, but also because it creates a ritual that reminds us of the value of sharing, of giving as we are able to support the people, places, and causes that matter to us. I am so grateful to you for the many ways that you give of your resources, of your time, ideas, love, and money with this community to sustain its mission here in Wayland. You may give in person, online at uuwayland.org, or by text. Details in the chat in order of service. Thank you. And once again, our offering will be gratefully received.
Silence.
As a religious institution, deepening our spirituality is a core part of our mission. We are more than a social club, more than a funnel for social activism. We are religious. We are religious, which is to say that we make space for diverse ways of being religious. While we could debate the particular ways that religion and spirituality are and are not the same thing, for this moment, I ask your forbearance and the details allow me this. Religion is the group container for the spiritual life we can experience both as individuals and in the company of others, including services here. When we gather, part of what we do is seek to foster the spiritual within and between us. And yet, as we've heard, our spiritual lives are so much more than what happens here on Sunday mornings. To close, Alyssa and I will read excerpts from a March 2021 article in Psychology Today entitled "The Opposite of Spiritual" by therapist Russell Seiler-Jones.
The opposite of spiritual is mechanical. Machines operate without thinking and without choosing. Someone flips a switch and they do their thing, whatever that is, without consciousness, without freedom, without volition.
To live mechanically as a human is to live as a stimulus response machine, to think, feel, and act on automatic pilot by habit, reflex, and unconscious conditioning.
It's the opposite of that, the opposite of mechanical, that is at the heart of what it means to be spiritual. Spiritual is our capacity to know reality as it really is, not in the filtered way our inner machine is conditioned to perceive it, and to engage the really real from a posture of freedom rather than a posture of habit.
Being spiritual means sensing a gravitational center in ourselves that is deeper than the gravitational pull of external events and internal habits. It means noticing and attuning to an energy within that is other than, deeper than, and more real than the energy of our various surface identities.
It means using this deeper frequency in ourselves as a kind of radar or sonar to notice and attune to the deeper frequency in others, other people, other animals, plants, and spaces, and to guide our interactions with these others.
It takes intention and continual effort to be spiritual in the way I am describing. Most of the social systems we live in exert immense pressure on us to be mechanical and sleepy.
But in another sense, to be spiritual in the way we're describing is the easiest thing in the world. Living mechanically may be our default mode, but that doesn't mean it's easy. There is a dukkha, said the Buddha. There is suffering. There is satisfaction, dissatisfaction. There is something about default mode that brings us pain and leaves us lacking. Or to paraphrase St. Paul, the wages of mechanical living is death.
But beneath the dissatisfying and wearying hum and thrum of mechanical living, there is a deeper pulse. It is forever beating in us and in all things, its energy radiant and resonant. While we sleep and dream, it keeps calling our secret name. Eventually we hear it, a hearing that sneaks up on us. We realize we've been hearing it all along, but only now we are noticing that we're hearing it. This is called falling awake. May we all seek to fall awake in our living by whatever path helps us to get there. And our closing hymn is 1009, and there's a crew of folks that are going to head up here to help us. Despite the title of this hymn, I don't believe it is a quiet song. Rather, I want us to sing it with all the wakeful intention we can muster. To help, we have our leaders, and we are going to practice each part first, but please rise in body or in spirit. First is the drone, the lowest part, and you're going to have your pick of parts. This isn't going to be one of those, this third gets this, that third gets this. So practice each part and figure out which is the part that resonates with you today. So Kit. And then the second part is the melody, which we'll practice now. And the descant. That song gives me goosebumps when it's sung like that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sustained by our connection to each other and to all that is holy, let us go and be beyond these walls, bringing more light and life, love and justice to our shared world. Amen.